He swallowed enough poison to kill 5 men, yet he stood up and started dancing in the cold, dark basement. Then 3 bullets hit his chest, but the mad monk still crawled across the snow to find his terrified killers. They bound his hands and threw him into the frozen river, where his heart beat under the thick black ice. Guards later found his body with lungs full of water, suggesting he was breathing even inside that deep, icy tomb. This story of a man who could not die has haunted the world for more than 100 long years. Historians often wonder if this terrifying tale of survival was just a clever lie to hide a much darker truth. The legend says he was a monster, but the facts suggest he might have been a very different kind person. We must peel back the layers of history to see if the devil was actually wearing the mask of God. Was Rasputin truly a holy man with magic powers, or was he the greatest con artist in all of history? The journey begins in the cold wind of Siberia, where a simple peasant first discovered his strange and heavy gift. Across the vast Russian Empire whispered that this man could heal the sick with a single, very gentle touch. He walked thousands of miles to reach the city, and people claimed he could see deep into their private souls. His eyes were like blue fire that could burn through any secret and make the strongest men tremble with fear. Every word he spoke seemed to carry the weight of heaven, and his presence brought a strange and calm peace. No one knew where his power came from, but they followed him like sheep following a shepherd into the dark. He was a simple farmer who became a god to the poor and a mystery to the rich and powerful. His reputation traveled faster than his feet until the name of Rasputin was known in every single house in Russia. The common people believed he was a saint sent by the Lord to save them from their many hard lives. Did they truly see a holy man, or were they just desperate for a miracle in a very cruel world? Soon the whispers of the poor reached the ears of the royal family, who were hiding a very tragic secret. The second ruled Russia from a golden throne, but he was a man broken by a very deep grief. His only son and the heir to the empire was born with a blood disease that no doctor could cure. Hemophilia meant that a small bruise or a tiny cut could cause the young boy to bleed to his death. The royal family lived in constant terror as they watched their precious child suffer in his quiet and lonely bed. They kept the illness a secret from the public because they feared the world would think the monarchy was weak. Desperate for help, the empress turned to every healer she could find, but none of them could stop the pain. Then she heard about a holy man from the deep woods who could perform wonders with only his bare hands. She believed that God had sent this peasant to save her son and protect the future of the entire nation. Was it fate that brought the monk to the palace, or was it a trap set by the dark universe? The moment Rasputin stepped into the royal nursery, the history of Russia changed forever and for all of the time. Alexei was screaming in pain while his royal parents watched helplessly as his life slowly faded away from him. Rasputin entered the room and sat quietly by the bed. Then he began to pray in a very low voice. He told the mother to dry her tears because the boy would live and the bleeding would stop right now. Suddenly the child stopped crying and his fever broke while the color returned to his pale and thin little face. The doctors were shocked because they could not explain how a peasant could do what science had failed to achieve. From that day on, the empress believed Rasputin was a living saint who held the power of life and death. She invited him to stay and gave him everything he wanted because she was afraid her son would die alone. The peasant from Siberia was now the most important person in the royal court of the great and vast Russia. Did he truly heal the boy with magic, or did he just use the power of a calm mind? This miracle gave him a secret power that he would soon use to control the destiny of a dying empire. Ministers and generals were forced to wait in long lines just to speak with the dirty monk from the woods. He whispered advice into the ear of the empress, and she followed his words as if they were commands from heaven itself. Rasputin decided who would lead the army and which men would lose their power inside the fragile imperial system. The Tsar was often away at war, leaving the palace under the silent control of a man no one could challenge. People started to whisper that the monk had become the real ruler, while the Tsar himself had turned into nothing more than a symbol. His control over the empress was so complete that no advisor or minister could break through the wall around her mind. He used his influence to reward loyal followers and destroy enemies, while the empire slowly moved toward chaos and instability. The royal family became isolated from their own people because they trusted a man who was feared and hated across the country. Could one man really weaken a dynasty that had survived for centuries using nothing but quiet words and unseen influence? While he played the role of a holy man inside the palace, his life outside was becoming something far more dangerous. Rasputin spent his nights in the wild bars of St. Petersburg, drinking heavily and surrounding himself with women and chaos. He told his followers that sin was necessary before redemption, and that only through darkness could they reach true spiritual purity. Stories of his behavior spread quickly through newspapers and shocked the noble class who saw him as a growing threat. He became a man with two faces, one that prayed in daylight and another that disappeared into sin when the night arrived. The secret police followed his every move, documenting his actions and building a record of behavior that terrified those in power. They saw him stumble through the streets at dawn, his clothes torn, and his appearance far from the image of holiness. Many believed he used dark forces to control minds and hold power over the royal family and their fragile decisions. The holy man transformed into a symbol of corruption and danger in the eyes of both the public and religious leaders. Was he a broken man lost in his own desires, or someone who fully understood how to use power without limits? His enemies were growing stronger, and they were no longer willing to watch from the shadows as his influence continued expanding. Felix Yusupov was one of the richest men in Russia, and he decided that the monk had to die. He gathered a group of powerful nobles who believed they were saving the empire from a dangerous and uncontrollable force. They did not fear him because he was evil, but because they had no way to control his growing influence. To them, Rasputin was a disease slowly destroying the traditions that had kept the monarchy alive for generations. They believed that if he lived, the people would rise and destroy everything they had spent their lives protecting. Felix invited Rasputin to his palace under the promise of a night filled with luxury and beautiful company. It was not an invitation, but a carefully planned trap built with wealth deception and a very deadly intention. The conspirators prepared a private basement room filled with food and wine secretly poisoned with enough cyanide to kill many men. Could these powerful men truly kill someone who seemed protected by something beyond normal human understanding? As midnight arrived, Rasputin stepped through the palace doors unaware that he was walking directly into the final moment of his life. Calmly ate the poisoned cakes and drank the wine, yet nothing happened, and he only asked for more. Felix watched in horror as the man who should have died began to sing as if nothing had touched him. In panic, the prince pulled out a pistol and fired directly into Rasputin's chest at extremely close range. They believed it was over until Rasputin suddenly opened his eyes and grabbed Felix with terrifying strength. He rose from the floor and staggered toward the courtyard, while the nobles chased him in fear and disbelief. Gunshots echoed through the night as the attackers fired again, until the monk finally collapsed into the freezing ground. They wrapped his body tightly and drove through the empty streets toward a bridge above the dark frozen river. Without hesitation, they threw his body into the icy water and watched as it disappeared beneath the broken surface. Did the freezing river finally succeed where poison and bullets had failed, or was the story about to become even stranger? The story of his death would become far more powerful than his life, turning him into a legend that refused to disappear. Science tells us a very different story about the death of the man they called the immortal mad monk. The cyanide might have been old and useless, or the sugar in the cakes could have neutralized the deadly poison. Autopsy reports showed that the gunshots were actually the real cause of his death on that very cold winter night. There was no water found in his lungs, which proves that he was already dead before he hit the river. The killers likely lied about his survival to make themselves look like heroes who had defeated a powerful dark demon. They wanted the world to believe he was a monster so that their crime would seem like a holy act. The legend was created by the men who killed him, not by the man who lived the actual life himself. We often build up our enemies into giants so that our own small victories feel much more important and grand. Is it possible that the truth is much simpler and more human than the terrifying ghost story we all know? By killing the man, they created a ghost that would haunt the Russian people for a very long time coming. Is not always made of facts, but is often built from the dreams and the nightmares of the people. We prefer to believe in magic and monsters, because a world without mystery feels too empty and too very cold. Rasputin was the perfect character for a story about the end of an empire and the fall of the kings. He was a mirror that reflected the fears of a nation that was about to change in a violent way. Even today, his name brings to mind images of dark rooms and secrets that should never have been told aloud. We remember the myth because it is more powerful and more exciting than the reality of a simple peasant life. Truth is often buried under the snow of time, and we only see what we want to see in history. The mad monk remains a shadow in the corner of our minds, waiting for us to tell his story again. Would you rather believe in the man who could not die, or the man who was just a human lie? The answers are lost in the deep and frozen river, where the legend of Rasputin will live forevermore.